Most people assume a billboard fee is just a billboard fee. But in Oyo State right now, 3 rival political camps are accusing the same state agency of using billboard rules as a weapon, while that agency insists it's just doing its job. In the space of 2 weeks, an ADC candidate's billboard vanished and was replaced with the governor's own party's banner. An APC candidate says his billboards were torn down in what he calls a reckless abuse of state power. And the state agency responsible for all of it says none of this is political at all. Someone here is wrong. Let's find out who and why it matters far beyond a few billboards. Before we unpack the full story, take a moment to subscribe to Naija Political Lens. We don't chase headlines, we examine the decisions, institutions, and strategies shaping Nigeria's future. If you value facts over noise, you're in the right place. This isn't really a story about billboards. It's a story about who controls visibility in a democracy. Literally, who gets seen. Oyo State is heading into one of Nigeria's most closely watched 2027 governorship races. Governor Seyi Makinde, now positioning himself as a national opposition figure through the Allied People's Movement, faces challenges from the APC and the ADC. The same ADC whose presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar is also on some of the disputed billboards. When a state regulatory agency controls the physical infrastructure candidates use to reach voters, billboards, banners, roadside signage, its decisions about who complies, who gets fined, and whose structure gets demolished at night carry real electoral weight. That's true anywhere in the world. It's especially sensitive in a state where the sitting governor's own party stands to benefit from every square foot of billboard space competitors lose. Let's establish the sequence, because the order of events matters here. Pre-2027 cycle, OYO'S, the Oyo State Signage and Advertising Agency, operates as the state's outdoor advertising regulator, a role it has held for years, covering permits, fees, and structural safety standards for all billboards, regardless of political content. Recent weeks reported mid to late July 2026, the Oyo State government issues a notice announcing new regulatory and financial requirements for candidates and supporters seeking to use outdoor advertising for 2027 campaign purposes. Saturday, July 18, 2026, the media office of ADC governorship candidate Oloye Taufik Adigboyaga Adebgok alleges the illegal removal of his billboard at Idi-Ape Junction in Ibadan, a billboard that also carried the image of ADC presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar. Monday, July 20th, 2026, a banner featuring Governor Makinde and APM governorship candidate Bimbo Adekanmbi appears at that same Idi-Ape Junction location. The ADC's original billboard, according to their account, is torn apart by unidentified persons. Same period, the Oyo State APC, through Publicity Secretary Olawe Sadare, publicly accuses the government of directing OYO'S to clamp down on non-APM campaigners, alleging the goal is to make only APM candidates visible statewide. Following days, the media team for APC governorship candidate Senator Sharafadeen Alli alleges further politically motivated destruction and forced removal of his campaign billboards, describing it as an abuse of state power. Friday, July 24, 2026, OYO'S conducts a formal enforcement operation against more than 18 billboard structures found non-compliant, citing unpaid statutory fees, missing permits, unauthorized structures, and structures resting on electricity poles posing safety hazards. Throughout, OYO'S, through its spokesperson Ajatmovie, publicly and repeatedly denies any political motivation, describing its actions as standard nighttime safety enforcement and stating the agency will not be blackmailed by false victimization claims. Here's the detail that complicates the clean regulatory enforcement narrative. The billboard removed on July 18th and replaced with an Abubakar Makinde banner by July 20th was not cited for any safety violation in that specific dispute. It was simply swapped. Separating confirmed fact from allegation is essential here because both sides are making claims the other disputes. OYO'S has issued new regulatory and financial compliance requirements affecting outdoor political advertising ahead of 2027. OYO'S conducted a documented enforcement operation on July 24, 2026 against 18+ non-compliant structures, citing specific listed infractions. The ADC candidate's billboard at Idi-Ape Junction was replaced with an Abubakar Makinde banner around July 18, 2026. This specific swap is acknowledged by multiple accounts, including the PDP APM spokesperson, who suggested the ADC's payment period may have lapsed. The ADC ADC campaign disputes that account, stating their payment remained valid through August 20th, 2026, meaning in their account, the space should not have been reallocated. APC Senator Alli campaign has separately and independently alleged billboard destruction and forced removal of his campaign billboards, a claim not directly addressed by OYO'S in available reporting.
Or are designed, as APC alleges, to favor APM. The exact wording and scope of the new directive APC claims to have obtained, no full text of this directive appears to have been independently published or verified by neutral outlets as of this writing. So is this a regulator doing its job or a regulator picking sides? The answer may depend on a document nobody outside government has actually seen yet. This dispute sits at an unusually interesting institutional intersection: administrative regulation versus electoral fairness. OYSAA's legal mandate. As a state signage and advertising agency, OYSAA has a legitimate, pre-existing statutory mandate to regulate outdoor advertising for public safety, structural integrity, and revenue collection, a mandate that predates the 2027 election cycle and applies in principle to all advertisers regardless of political affiliation. The Grey Zone. Nigerian electoral law, primarily through the Electoral Act and INEC guidelines, governs campaign conduct, but it does not typically extend detailed jurisdiction over municipal-level advertising infrastructure regulation. That remains a state and local government competency. This creates a genuine institutional gray area. INEC has limited direct authority to intervene in a dispute framed as billboard permit enforcement, even if the underlying effect is electoral. Executive discretion versus abuse of power. A governor's administration setting or enforcing advertising fee schedules is a legitimate exercise of executive authority over state agencies. The constitutional question only arises if enforcement can be shown to be applied selectively based on political affiliation, which would raise equal protection and free political expression concerns under Nigeria's constitution, but which requires evidence of discriminatory intent or effect, not just suspicion. Judicial recourse. Affected candidates have the option of seeking redress to Nigerian courts if they believe OYSAA's enforcement is discriminatory or procedurally improper. As of this writing, no reporting indicates any party has yet filed a formal legal challenge, specifically over the billboard disputes, as distinct from Oyo State's separate ongoing court dispute with the EFCC over financial records, which is a different matter entirely. ENEC's limited but real role. ENEC does have authority to monitor campaign conduct broadly, and could in principle be petitioned by affected parties to examine whether state-level actions are undermining a level electoral playing field, though this would be an unusual and untested use of INEC's oversight function in this specific context. The institutional picture explains why nobody has a clean legal remedy yet. The political picture explains why nobody particularly wants one. Who gains from the current situation? If OYSAA's enforcement genuinely does disadvantage non-APM candidates, even unintentionally through uneven application, the immediate beneficiary is Makinde's APM, which gains outsized visual dominance in public spaces at minimal cost, since the removed competitor billboards are simply replaced with APM material, as happened at Idi-Ape Junction. Who gains from making this a public controversy? For the APC and ADC, publicly alleging a coordinated clampdown serves a dual purpose. Regardless of whether OYSAA's actions are proven discriminatory, it generates sympathy and media attention, and it prepositions a narrative of persecution that can be invoked throughout the 2027 campaign season if friendly incidents occur. OYSAA and the state government's calculation, firmly and repeatedly denying political motivation, as OYSAA has done, explicitly rejecting blackmail via false victimization claims, is a deliberate strategy to avoid legitimizing the opposition's framing. Notably, the state government has taken a similarly firm posture in its separate ongoing standoff with the EFCC over financial disclosure, consistently framing legal and regulatory pushback as principle rather than defensive, a broader pattern in how the Makinde administration currently manages controversy. APM's national positioning angle. This dispute unfolds against the backdrop of Makinde's emergence as the Allied People's Movement's national presidential candidate, with the party explicitly positioning him as a unifying opposition figure against President Tinubu and the APC nationally. Any credible allegation that his home state administration is suppressing electoral competition domestically create an obvious tension with that national, credible and accountable leadership narrative, raising the stakes of this dispute well beyond Oyo State. Coalition politics. The specific detail that Atiku's image appeared on the disputed ADC billboard adds another layer. This dispute touches not just Oyo's governorship race, but indirectly implicates the national ADC Atiku 2027 presidential campaign, linking a local billboard fight to the broader national opposition coalition dynamics. I'd like to hear your perspective. Based on what you've seen so far, do you think this is targeted political suppression, routine regulatory enforcement, or something in between? Share your thoughts in the comments before we look at what this could cost Oyo's advertising industry and its democratic credibility. The outdoor advertising industry itself, independent billboard operators and advertising practitioners, the people who actually own and lease these structures, are caught in the middle. At least one operator, identified only as Adeyemi in reporting, alleges his structure was demolished specifically after declining to display an APM campaign banner, a claim that if substantiated would represent direct economic coercion against private business operators, not just political candidates. Compliance costs, OYSAA stated enforcement priorities, unpaid statutory fees, missing permits, structural and environmental standard violations represent legitimate regulatory costs that any advertiser, political or commercial, should reasonably expect to absorb. The dispute isn't over whether fees exist, but over whether they are being applied evenly. Business climate signal. For an outdoor advertising sector already operating on tight margins, a public perception that regulatory approval depends on political alignment, even if ultimately unproven, creates a chilling effect that could suppress legitimate commercial and political advertising investment in the state well beyond the 2027 cycle. Public trust cost. Every unresolved allegation of this kind, regardless of which side is ultimately vindicated, adds to broader public skepticism about whether Nigerian state institutions can be trusted to apply rules neutrally during election seasons, a cost that compounds across election cycles. Here's a number worth noting: over 18. That's the count of billboard structures cited in a single enforcement sweep, a sweep that occurred just days after the more politically charged Idi-Ape billboard swap, a timing overlap opposition figures have seized on, even though OYSAA maintains the two events are unconnected.
This dispute, while not a security crisis in the conventional sense, touches on something equally important to democratic stability: confidence in electoral fairness at the sub-national level. Nigeria's history includes numerous instances where perceived incumbency advantages, control over state resources, agencies, and infrastructure have fueled post-election disputes and public distrust. Disputes over something as visible and symbolically potent as campaign billboards can escalate tensions between party supporters on the ground, particularly if physical destruction of materials, as alleged by APC's Alli campaign, continues without independent investigation or resolution. Comparable democratic contexts. Disputes over incumbent control of public advertising and campaign infrastructure are not unique to Nigeria. Several African and global democracies have faced similar controversies where ruling parties controlled municipal permitting processes for campaign materials and opposition parties alleged selective enforcement. The specific pattern here, a regulatory agency simultaneously denying political motivation while enforcement outcomes visibly favor the incumbent-aligned party, is a recurring feature of these disputes internationally, not unique to Oyo. Diaspora and international observers. As Makinde positions himself as a national and increasingly internationally visible opposition figure, his home state administration's handling of this dispute will likely draw closer scrutiny from Nigerian diaspora political commentary and international democracy monitoring organizations tracking Nigeria's 2027 election preparations, even though, as of this writing, no major international body has issued a specific statement on this billboard dispute. No confirmed ECOWAS, AU, UN or foreign government engagement has been reported on this specific matter, which remains for now a domestic Oyo State political and regulatory dispute. If this pattern repeats in other Nigerian states as 2027 approaches, does it become a national election integrity story rather than a local one? That's a question worth watching closely. The strongest case that this is genuine regulatory enforcement, OYSAA has a documented pre-existing statutory mandate, and its July 24th enforcement action cited specific, verifiable apolitical infractions, unpaid fees, missing permits, and genuine public safety hazards like structures resting on electricity poles. Regulatory agencies enforcing compliance ahead of an election season when advertising volume spikes dramatically is not inherently suspicious. It may simply reflect increased enforcement activity coinciding with increased advertising activity. The strongest case that this reflects political favoritism, the specific documented swap of the ADC candidate's billboard for an APM banner, occurring during a period the ADC insists their payment remains valid, is difficult to explain as neutral regulatory enforcement, since no infraction was cited for that specific structure in available reporting. Combined with independent, similar allegations from the APC's Alli campaign and from at least one independent billboard operator, a pattern of complaints from multiple unrelated parties carries more weight than any single allegation would alone. Where genuine uncertainty remains, without independent access to OYSAA's actual compliance and payment records for the specific disputed structures, it is not possible to definitively confirm or refute either side's account from public reporting alone. This is a case where the truth may only become clear if the matter proceeds to formal investigation or litigation. If this analysis is helping you see the bigger picture, click the like button. It tells YouTube that thoughtful political conversations deserve a wider audience. Scenario 1. Continued low-grade dispute. Absent formal legal action, expect this to continue as a recurring cycle of opposition allegations and OYSAA denials throughout the 2027 pre-campaign period, generating periodic news cycles without formal resolution. Scenario 2. Formal legal challenge. If APC's Senator Alli or ADC's Adekanmbi camps decide to pursue judicial redress, potentially framing it as a constitutional free political expression or equal protection matter, this could produce a more definitive institutional resolution and would set an important precedent for how Nigerian courts handle state-level campaign infrastructure disputes going forward. Scenario 3. Escalation and INEC involvement. If similar incidents multiply closer to the actual election period, expect growing pressure for INEC or civil society election monitoring groups to formally weigh in, potentially elevating this from a state-level dispute to a national election integrity conversation. Signals to watch: whether OYSAA publishes the specific compliance/payment records for the Idi-Ape structure to substantiate its account, whether additional billboard operators come forward with similar claims, whether APC or ADC file any formal legal complaint, and whether this pattern of dispute is repeated in other Nigerian states as the 2027 cycle intensifies, which would suggest a structural rather than oil-specific problem. The next few minutes connect all the pieces together. Stay with me, because understanding what happens next may be even more important than understanding what has already happened. We opened by asking who's right when a state advertising agency insists it's neutral while 3 separate political camps say otherwise. The honest answer, based on what's currently verifiable, nobody has definitively proven their case yet. OYSAA's enforcement mandate is real, and its cited infractions are specific. But the timing, the pattern across multiple independent complainants, and the unexplained swap at Idi-Ape Junction make pure coincidence a harder sell than either side is currently willing to fully engage with. What we know for certain, Oyo's billboards have become an early, visible battleground for 2027. What remains unresolved is whether Nigeria's institutions, state regulators, courts, or INEC will settle this before it hardens into one more entrenched grievance narrative heading into election season. Watch whether OYSAA opens its compliance records to independent scrutiny. That, more than any political statement, will tell you whether this is regulation or retaliation. If this analysis gave you a clearer understanding of Nigeria's political landscape, share this video with someone who values informed discussion. Subscribe to 9JA Political Lens and turn on notifications, because when the headlines fade, informed citizens still need the full picture. This has been 9JA Political Lens, where we go beyond the headlines to uncover the facts, the context, and the strategy behind Nigeria's biggest political stories. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next analysis.